Look, we are fast approaching the end of the year. I don't know when you're listening to this. I don't know if it's going to be end of December or maybe even into the new year. I can tell you one thing. A lot of people start thinking about a new job. There is no doubt. It may not happen in January, right? Because you're hanging around for your bonus. You want to get that little extra cashola. But I'll tell you what, there's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of churn. There's going to be a lot of things happening in 2025. You mark my words, it is not going to be smooth. It doesn't mean it's going to be bad. But for us to have the proper conversation about what is happening next year, I've got John Gates. John, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Tony. It's really nice to be here with you. Thanks for asking me to join you. Super
Oh,
cool topic we're going to hit today.
this is an amazing topic. I love this topic. I even have your own little banner. Let's see if it's going to work. Look at this. We are such professionals here on the Jobtopia podcast. Look at that. Isn't that
Oh, Tony,
beautiful?
you put my name wrong on the banner,
I
dude.
did?
Yes, it's John Gates with a G.
Okay, this is hysterical. So we're going to literally hear on the fly. And I think, this is why this is why I should not be doing any of like the detail stuff.
Well,
Like because you know what it is? I get these big fat fingers. Look at this. Okay, save. And then let's see.
oh, still says John
Yeah,
Bates.
I hit save. I promise you I hit save.
Well, for those of you who are watching this, that's okay. My name is John Gates, and
It's hysterical.
not like the Bates Motel, but you can always look me up. There it is.
So now see, I shouldn't have said a professional podcast. I really blew it when I said professional podcast. I think that really probably was the dead giveaway at that point.
Yeah, Tony, it's just fine. No worries, man.
So now
This
you're
sort
traveling this week, aren't you?
yeah. So I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, or near Birmingham, Alabama, visiting my daughter and grandson. And normally I'm based in Southern Oregon, so it took me a while to get here. So I'm calling live from not from the Bates Motel, but from a different one. And so glad
Hey,
to be with you, man.
I tell you what though, negotiating a salary, trying to deal with that, it could feel like you're in the Bates Motel. It is a pretty scary topic. I mean, people just get totally mortified. Well, before we, kind of jump into the details of that, how in the world did you, as a business professional, end up as a career coach, a salary coach, are there in particular industries or all industries?
All industries, where pay negotiation doesn't work as effectively as like government positions where there's a super defined and narrow range for positions. But across the private sector is where
Yeah,
I
private sector. Yeah, yeah.
dealing with most often. So this works for any industry really. Mostly, it's good for salaried employees. When you're an hourly employee, it's harder to negotiate your pay. There's just more rules about years of experience calculating into how much hourly pay somebody's going to offer you. You can still negotiate on an hourly side, but when you get on the salaried side, and especially as you get into the more senior levels, there's a lot of room to maneuver. And most people are leaving thousands of dollars on the table, sometimes a lot more than that. The
Hmm.
C-suite person might be leaving, the C-suite by that I mean somebody with a C in front of their title, like chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief human resources officer. These people are often leaving six figures on the table, and they don't even know it. So,
Well, there's so many different components when you're looking at negotiating for a compensation package, and I think that's probably something I'm sure we'll get into. But there's a difference between obviously your salary and your benefits package. Your benefits, the
yeah.
perks. I mean, there's so many little details in there and lots of different strategies. So how did you? I mean, you have a business background. You're obviously not a fresh college graduate. Sorry if you're just listening on the audio podcast. John's a sharp handsome man, but he's not 22 years old. So, and we're not
No.
going to mention dates. We're not going to go into age, but no, but so how did you find yourself with the experience then to be this type of coach?
Yeah. So I started off after college becoming a recruiter. And I didn't want
Mm.
to be a recruiter when I first started. At least it wasn't my ambition. I wanted to be a financial analyst out of school. And as I graduated, I got an offer with a tech company to be a financial analyst. And 3 weeks before I was supposed to start, they rescinded all the job offers. They had made some mistakes and were pulling back all the outstanding offers. So I found myself with a newborn son and no job. So I started beating the bushes and hitting the networking scene quite heavily just to get a paycheck. And I ended up working at a temporary service as a recruiter. And they hired me because I could speak Spanish, I had a degree, and I looked good in a suit. And that's why they hired me. So I found out that I was actually really good at this, and it was a surprise. And started dispatching people who didn't speak English onto jobs, interviewing them in Spanish. Eventually, I got into technical recruiting, and over a period of time, got into corporate recruiting, and eventually the head of recruiting for multiple Fortune 500 companies. So throughout my career, Tony, I have been the guy negotiating on the other side of the table. I have been,
Yeah, from the employer side.
yes, I've been overseeing up to like thousands of job offers every year, 75,000 job offers in my career. So I've seen just about everything that can happen in a job offer and negotiation setting. After
Well,
I
you're
did,
the perfect person to talk to because, like I said, this is the time of year. Well, really, you go through a job change at any time during the year, but I just think there's a kind of a natural, hey, let's turn the page, let's get something new, let's get a fresh start. A lot of that stuff kind of happens in the first quarter.
yeah,
Um, Before you share with us some of your tips, what are some of the dumb things, the mistakes
mhm,
that are just so common? Maybe let's start with that.
yeah, yeah. A while ago, I started tracking how much my candidates were leaving on the table, and they were leaving a lot of money on the table. So Um, I know this because I would get an offer approved at a certain level. Let's say I got the offer approved at up to 185,000 in salary with a $20,000 signing bonus if I needed it. If I closed them at 175 with no signing bonus, then I just saved the company $10,000 in salary and 20,000 in signing bonus. So I started tracking these things, and one of the biggest mistakes that people make, Tony, is that they accept the offer immediately. And so in my negotiating practice, I tell people don't do that. Um, here's how to buy yourself a couple of days, ask some questions, and then use those questions to lead into an easy negotiation process that's low risk for you. Most
Well,
people
John, but
don't.
what happens if the client says, and let's say they're used to getting counters or what counter offers? What if the offer comes out and they say, "Hey, we're making you our best offer. Like this is our best offer," and that's the first thing that they say. I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I think it's great to build some time in so you can go do a little research and think about it, maybe
Mhm,
determine, hey, maybe we should be countering and counter with this.
sure. Yeah, so I think it's that happens sometimes. I would say most companies don't do that.
Most don't, but I was trying. Yeah, you're an expert, so we thought we'd throw you a curveball right off the top.
No problem. All right. So if a company does that, and I'd say maybe that's going to happen 20% of the time, you'll get that. So it's still okay to ask questions. They're not going to pull the offer from you if you ask questions. So you want to look at that offer and see if it's deficient in any particular way. For example, they made their best offer. Does that mean they're capped out on salary? They're capped out on the signing bonus. They're not going to do anything more for you. It's important to keep in mind that they want you to say yes. They've made you the offer. You've been selected. So what they want you to do is say yes, and they try to maneuver you into an immediate yes by saying the offer is not negotiable. It's firm. It's our best and final, and that sort of thing. So you can use questions to discover if it's really true that it's best and final. And you might find out that it is indeed best and final. And if that's the case, then you got a decision to make. You're going to accept that or you're not going to accept it. But sometimes you're able to make some minor modifications to the offer. Sometimes they're not even financial. So you can say, well, during the interview, it looked like was going to be required that I be in person 5 days a week. I have these other commitments. Would it be possible if I worked from home 2 days a week and worked in the office 3 days a week? That's a modification to the offer that you can negotiate in. If you're senior level, sometimes you can even negotiate severance, and now's the time you want to do that. The most power you have in this whole conversation is between the time they offer you the job and the time they say that you say yes. They want you to say yes because if you say no, it means they have to go all the way back to the beginning. If they don't have a runner up candidate in the wings, they have to restart their recruiting process, which might take 2 or 3 months. And keep in mind that hiring manager is covering for the vacancy. They've got a short staffed team or they wouldn't be recruiting. They've got team members who are grumbling, saying, how long do I have to do
How
this?
long do I have to carry this extra baggage?
Yeah, they're worried that they might lose those people if they don't close the deal. So even though they might say it's best and final, very often you can get an adjustment in there.
Now,
So
maybe it's just me, but I hear what you're saying, and you're totally right. But I think there's a fear that kind of creeps in that you're not supposed to counteroffer.
right.
And I have felt that before, myself. I mean, I've had to, as a recruiter, I've had to manage, many offers back to clients. And some
Hmm.
clients just give you the feeling that you don't want to counter us. There's a vibe, that you have there.
Yep,
So how do you maybe just kind of talk us through the actual
sure.
power? I mean, you maybe just flesh that out a little bit more. Maybe let's really make
Yeah.
that point. The power that you have should include the confidence to ask those great questions and perhaps,
Yeah.
not be fearful that they're just going to yank it from you.
I'll just reassure the audience that yanking the offer at this stage is very rare. It does happen sometimes, but it's very rare. Usually it happens if you show up as a different person than when you were interviewing. So if you put on a different personality now that you're negotiating, the hiring manager sometimes comes back to me as the recruiter and say, I was interviewing Tony and he just seemed like such a great fit, but now that we're negotiating, I'm afraid that the Tony I interviewed is not the Tony that I'm going to be getting. And sometimes that results in an offer being rescinded. But here's an example of how you can ask a question, even if they say we're best and final. You can ask a question to say, when does the health insurance become effective? That's a simple question, doesn't put the offer at risk. You're just wanting to know, when does the health insurance become effective? And they say, well, the health insurance becomes effective after you've been here for 6 months. If that's the answer, you can say, well, I'm carrying Cobra for the next 6 months then, and it's costing me $1,000 a month to do Cobra. Would it be possible to give me a signing bonus to cover that so that I'm not in the hole for the next 6 months until your health insurance comes online? Now, notice the way I asked that. I didn't put a counter offer on the table. I just asked, would it be possible to put something together to help me cover that cost? Because if you can't do that, it might make it hard for me to accept your offer.
Yeah, what I like about what you're doing there is you're not making it sound like a negotiation. And I think that is kind of a mindset that you have to take. It's a style. It's kind of stylistically the way
Yeah.
you're approaching them. And you have to remember these are people that you're going to be working with. So in my view, there should be a pretty good vibe
Hmm.
at this stage.
Yes. And I think most people, Tony, feel like negotiation or putting a counteroffer out is confrontational. It's
Yes.
like a high risk game of chicken where you're out there and you're doing battle with somebody and there's a winner or a loser. But the mindset shift that you're looking for here is a collaboration. You want a discussion and a collaboration and an exploration of what is possible. And so you ask the right questions at the right time. You do that to see what they can do, what they can't do. Can they move the base up a little bit, the salary up a little bit? If the answer is no, maybe they can make you whole or make you happy in some other way. Maybe they could, would it be possible to adjust the bonus target some so that we can play with the total compensation makeup a little bit? You're telling me that we can't offer more base because we have three other people that we're comparing to. We're just stuck or we're at the top of the range. Well, I want to join you. You want me to join you. So what else is there? How can we adjust and work together to cross this bridge? And I think it's important too, is along the way, if you have competitive offers, or even if you don't, if you got an interview next week, you can say things like, well, if you can do these things for me, then I'll say yes right now, and we can start planning the onboarding. And if you can't, that's okay. You just let me know what you could do, but I might have to take that interview next week because I've already committed to it. And so you're not saying
That is
no.
slightly more aggressive, but I think there's a but it's a valid but I mean, I think at that point though, you're really trying to show them that, look, you've got options too. I know that. See, that's that little fine line that you're kind of dancing around. That's a slightly more aggressive approach. But if you
Yeah,
truly do have another company that
yes.
you're evaluating, in my opinion, when you're evaluating companies, you are stack ranking them.
Hmm.
You just are. It's natural. This
Yeah.
company's A, this company's B.
Hmm.
And if you're talking to company B, and you've got company A that hasn't interviewed you yet, or maybe you're trying to finish, company B's interview, but company B comes in with a great offer. You see what I mean? It makes it more complicated. Like, well,
It's a tough
you,
dance, but I'll tell you, introducing competition into the language that you use maximizes your value in the marketplace.
so when do you, okay, so let's talk about timing. You said something to me before we were recording, and I said, save that. I want you to go into this as we're kind of recording. You said something about the best time to start. We're going to use the word negotiating, but we're really the discussion
Yeah,
is not
paper,
at the end.
right.
And so why is that? Can you kind of flesh this out? Kind of walk us through, how this would look.
Yes. This is a really common misconception, I think, out there. And I'm glad you brought it up, Tony, because most people, when you ask them, when does the negotiation begin? Most people think it begins when you have an offer, when you have numbers to negotiate. But in my opinion, and in the salary coach method, I teach that negotiation is a process that begins from the very first time you start talking to a company. So when you are applying and they ask you what's your salary requirement in the application, that's the shot across the bow. They're trying to figure out how much, what's the category you're in, how much you're going to cost, and all that very early on. And then
Wait,
when
can I stop you on that one point?
yes.
So for years, when I first got into executive search, one of the very first pieces of training that I had that we always gave out was never put a number in there.
Hmm.
It
It's
was
a
always, oh, you always put open because as you didn't want to get yourself knocked out of the process. You wanted to be able to get
yes.
yourself into the process, evaluate it. If you put a number too high, they're out.
Yep, correct. We're going to put some meat on the bones right here for the listener because I was taught that too, Tony. When I was a young job seeker and actually a young recruiter, that was the wisdom of the day. But after being and sitting in the corporate recruiting chair for so long, I will tell you that putting open or negotiable or something like that in the application is a big mistake. I want to tell you why. Because the average corporate recruiter is working on 30 to 40 open positions at any given point in time. So if there are 30 of them and they have 40 hours in a week, do the math and figure out how many hours they have to devote to each opening. Now figure that they have 200 applicants for each of these positions. Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 80, maybe it's 200, maybe it's 500. You don't know. But they have to put time into reviewing all the applications. And then from that, they're going to decide who they're going to call. And they're so time pressed. This is why putting negotiable in there is such a mistake. If you end up with 15 people that meet the qualifications that look good on paper, and you only have time to call 7 or 8 of those, which ones are you not going to call? You're not going to call the ones that you're not sure if they're going to fit. You don't want to waste time scheduling and then reaching out and then talking to somebody only to discover that they're way off in terms of compensation. So what's the answer? You
Yeah,
already
so that's where I'm at right now. It's like, okay, okay, I take your point, and I did work in I worked for a very the largest privately held company in Georgia for a couple years before I
yep.
got spit out of that machine. Uh,
Here's what you do, right?
I got liberated. So let's use a just a simple hypothetical. Let's say there's an individual who is accustomed to making $100,000 a year.
Yes.
That's kind of their lifestyle, about a hundred. Let's say the bonus is 10%.
Okay.
And they're now, so everyone wants a raise. Everyone
Yeah.
likes a raise when they take the job. So you got
Mhm.
that. Here's the application, and there's the box.
Yes.
And then the
So
magic question is like, okay, do I put in 120? Do I put in my current salary? Do I look at what I think the market is paying? I mean, I'm sure that may be where you're going is that
yeah,
if you know what the market bears, you do your own research and you know the role that you're interviewing for is roughly, let's say 120 to 140.
yeah.
Maybe split the difference and put 130.
Well, here's what I would say. First of all, don't worry about this because you're not going to be stuck with what you put in the application. I'm going to
Okay.
talk about how you become unstuck from this. People are worried about what number they put in there. Put in the number that's going to get your phone ringing. Because if you put in a number that's too high, thinking this is the place you start to negotiate, right? And you start, let's say you want to make 130, so you put 130 in there. Well, if that's too high for them early on, you'll get screened out and you won't get the call. You won't have a chance to tell them why you're worth 130. So you want to put a number in here that's kind of medium low for you so that you get that phone call. You want to get screened in at this stage. And then when you're on the phone, it's very important that you reset this number into a range.
I see.
So,
So
uh,
that way you kind of get it locked in because you don't want to never have had that conversation.
yeah,
And then they go back to the app and they go, well, but you said,
yeah. Now you're gonna hear a callback to something I said earlier when I said it's important to be introducing competition into the language that you use.
yeah,
When you get that phone call, they're going to ask you again, what's your pay requirement? They want to verify that information so that they can then share you with their client or share you with the hiring manager or something like that. The recruiter or the person calling you has all the power at this point to flush you right down the toilet. So on that call, they need to make sure that you're qualified, you're interested, and you're affordable. And what they're trying to do is get a number out of you at this stage because to them that's easier. It's you're either in or you're out. You're in the range or you're not. But to preserve your own negotiating ability and to move things up, the best response here is a range. So when they ask you in the phone screen, what's your pay requirement? I just want to confirm that. Then you can say, well, I put 120,000 in the box because it was requiring me to put a number in there. But I'm having open discussions with a number of other companies for similar positions, and those discussions have compensation in the range of 120 to 185 or something like that, right? You offer them a range like that. And then
right.
you say, how does that range fit with your range? Is there overlap in there somewhere? Another way you can do this is, you before you answer that question, you can say, "Well, I want to tell you exactly what I'm looking for. I want to give you I want to be very transparent with you about that, so I'm glad you're asking. But first, can you tell me what your budget is for the position?"
I
And
see. I love that one.
if you,
So
yeah,
to me, I hate negotiating against myself.
hmm
And I think what that is, that's a beautiful, natural. You didn't just say, well, you didn't say what's your budget. You spoke about the marketplace. You spoke about what you were doing and that you were excited that we have this opportunity to talk about it and be open and transparent.
yep,
What is your range? I mean, that's perfect.
yep,
And they're gonna either dance around it or they're gonna come back and say,
right.
well, our process is that, we want a range from you.
It's
And they could. I mean, you could be just dealing with a robotic, you know, not
yeah,
that great internal
it's
recruiter.
yeah. Sometimes they'll give you the information, but I think the key here is when you ask for their range or their budget, you have to be quiet for about 7 or 8 seconds.
Be comfortable in that silence. Just let it go.
And it's the silence kind of communicates that you expect an answer, and people tend to fill the void with their voice. And so they might say, well, we haven't figured that out yet, or our range is confidential. Those are all squishy, wiggly things, in which case you can then just offer your own very wide range at that point.
Then you reply with a squishy and
Yeah. And so the mistake here, though, is giving them a number early on, because let's say your number is 150 and you'd be happy with 150, but in their mind that's a real stretch, or maybe it's even above the top of what the recruiter thinks that they could do. It's in the interview, the following conversation, the interview with the hiring manager and the hiring team, that you prove that you're worth a high number. So you don't want to paint yourself into a corner here by giving a number. That's why you give a range. If
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
you offer a range and there's enough overlap, now the recruiter feels comfortable and confident that they can close you in the end. Because you and I both know, Tony, the worst mistake a recruiter can make is filling an interview slate filled with people that can't be closed at the end. If the offer falls apart at the finish line over money, then there's egg all over the recruiter's face. So they want to avoid this.
Yeah.
They want to feel comfortable and confident that you work with them to get to a good number at the finish line. If they feel good about that, now you can enter into the interview process with a range, and this allows you to move up in your own range. And I would suggest too that people, let's say they say, well, our range is 120 to 145. We think that's realistic for this position. You can say, well, my range is 125 to 185. That's what I'm discussing with other companies. And it's okay and should be that your top number is over their top number. Why? Because most recruiters try to push your expectations down.
That is 100% true.
No, because it's easier to surprise on the upside
Oh,
than to
you're giving
surprise,
away all the secrets.
right? So you and I both know this because we're both recruiters. So if the top of the range is 170, they'll never tell you because the recruiter doesn't want you asking for 170.
Once the recruiter says 170,
That's what you want,
they
right?
think it's implanted in your head.
Yeah, that's what they want. So they might say 120 to 145 to set your expectations in that range, knowing they might be able to offer 150, 155 if you're really good. But sometimes maybe you're interviewing for a director level job and a senior director position might be open, or it might be possible to upgrade to a whole new gear. You just don't know, and the recruiter does not want to tell you if that's possible.
Right.
So you want to keep your negotiating range alive, and you reference other companies. You say, I'm discussing this with other companies for a couple of reasons. One, it's hard for the recruiter to challenge that that's happening. They can't disprove it like they could if you brought salary survey information. It's hard to argue that you're discussing with other companies and this is what they're talking to you about. But it tells them right away that you're good talent because other
Yes.
companies are interested.
It's a subtle, um,
It's a
tell.
very,
It's a
very,
subtle tell that, hey, Look at me. Look at me.
You got a little support
I got options. I've
here.
got options. You know, you guys, yeah, you guys look nice, but you know, I've got
Exactly.
some other nice ones over there.
So if you like me, you're gonna have to compete for me. And this tends to head off the low ball offers that can come sometimes. Now, if you go into the same process and it looks like you're desperate, you've got no options. You're begging
So
them.
how does desperation look? Or
Yeah.
how does it, I shouldn't say look. Just look at me. I'm desperate. No, no.
Yeah.
What is it? What does desperation sound like?
I think that's a good question. I think it sounds like we want to interview you, and it's like, well, you know what? My whole calendar next week is wide open. I got nothing going on. Um, Whereas a person with options might say, well, I've got a 2 hour window on Wednesday. All day Thursday looks pretty good. I've got some stuff happening on Friday, but if necessary, like I'm so interested in interviewing with you, I'm going to move that stuff around to make sure that I can see you on Friday if that's what's necessary. So that's just one example.
I mean, this is, I tell you, I love what you're doing, John, because this is an area in the process that I would spend just hours. I mean, this is one of those just you spend hours talking to candidates about this and trying to prepare them for how to handle every situation. And it's like you are this, uber expert that they can just go to. I can just outsource it.
Yep.
Go talk to go talk to John.
Yeah. So my clients like what I tell them to do when they get that call from a recruiter that says, I like your resume. Let's talk. Can you talk right now?" The answer
Wait,
is,
could you be like Roxanne? I mean, maybe we could catfish him.
yeah, yeah, kind of.
Hang
You,
on, hang on.
it's not a bit.
My voice, I don't sound. Hang on, let me call you right back. Okay, John,
Yeah, I love that.
call him up for me. John, handle this.
I don't negotiate for people, but I teach them how to do it for themselves. And that's the best part of this whole thing is you learn a skill that you can use forevermore after. And it's a skill that anybody can learn. Most people think negotiation is so scary and it's so confrontational that it's not them and they don't want to do it. But once you learn how to do it this way, it's low pressure, low stress, low anxiety, collaboration. You just got to know what to say at every step. And that's what I
See,
do.
and once you're prepared, it takes away some of that fear.
Yes,
That's kind of the key there. Um,
absolutely.
what was I going to say? Oh, you were talking about, you don't do the negotiations for them.
Yes.
There is nothing that turns recruiters off or companies off when someone shows up with them. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple of times uh, as a recruiter, and it's really like, do you
It's
mind
a huge
if
red
I
flag.
if you talk to my mom about this? 'Cause, like, it really does
Yeah, let me get right back to
destroy your
you.
credibility.
Click.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's no bueno. Um, I mean, there's so much here, you know. A couple things that you said that I really do kind of resonate with. I like the start, kind of start your negotiations early.
Hmm.
Don't just kind of hold it as like this Christmas present till the very end and on the final day you unwrap the present. You kind of need to plant the seeds about kind of what expectations are from the very beginning,
Yeah.
incorporate the idea that you are talking to other companies. And so you might be saying to yourself, well, yeah, but maybe I'm not working with other companies. Well, you actually, and technically you are. I mean, if you give yourself a little bit of creative license, if you're sending your resume out, if you're networking, if you're talking with anybody in your network and asking them what's happening in their company, you really technically are in conversations with other companies. You don't have all you have to say is, I'm in conversation with other companies.
Yes. There's
And that's how you can stay, honest about it rather than saying what you didn't say was the three other offers that I'm dealing with. You didn't say that.
No.
I mean,
And
you could, if you are in that situation, maybe that's the case, but
yeah, and you mentioned as well that you do candidates. Everybody will rank stack these opportunities, and there are some that you're more interested in than others. But the company that you're talking to right now does not have to know that you're not interested in that other company you're interviewing next week with. It's important too. I think you keep your interview pipelines full, your conversations full, your networking all the time, like you just said. Um, but this could include talking to companies that you're not truly interested in. You need to use them as negotiation leverage against the one that you are truly interested in. There's a there's a concept that I call out in my book, Act Your Wage, called mimetic desire.
oh,
It's
I like that. Well, hold on. Act to your wage.
yeah, my book is
That's
called
very clever. I mean, that's a kind of obviously a kind of a pun, kind of a little bit of play on the act your age, which I
yeah.
constantly hear all the time. I think I'm getting better. I mean, I think I will grow up one day. I'm gonna get there. Act your wage. That's good. Is that a Amazon book?
Yep, it's available on Amazon both in ebook and print form. So you can go get that today, and it covers the salary coach method from end to end. It's an affordable entry into this topic of how to negotiate your pay, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's not just a long sales pitch for what I do as a consultant
Okay, that's good. Yeah,
coach.
no one like. I mean, but this is very helpful. What you were saying. No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were starting to say you have a philosophy.
Yeah, mimetic desire is like it's almost like psychological sorcery, and we can tap that in the negotiation process by invoking this competition all the time. So mimetic desire, the way I describe it in the book, is picture this: you've got a room that's got 100 toys in it and two toddlers. So toddler A picks up one toy. Which toy does toddler B always want 100% of the time?
We already know the answer to that. The one the other kid's
Yeah,
holding.
the one the other kid has, right? This is hard coded into our brains and into our guts somewhere. We always want what somebody else has, and we want it more, and we think it's more valuable. This concept happens all the time in auctions where somebody starts bidding on something that you think looks ugly or worthless or whatever. Now there's 10 other people bidding on it. Now you wonder, I wonder what's going on with this. This must be more valuable than I thought. Now, when you start talking about how other companies are interested in you, or that you're pursuing other companies, or you're balancing scheduling this company with all the other companies that want to talk to you, you're activating mimetic desire. This tends to move you up in your range. People think you're more valuable just because other companies are pursuing you. They'll move things faster for you. They will, it just helps you to build leverage, which is something that you need. And the concept of leverage, I think of like a teeter totter. And when you first,
Yes.
when you first start this process, you have
It's like it's
very
all the way over on the client side.
very little leverage where a recruiter can just, like I said before, flush you down the toilet before anybody else falls in love with you.
I don't think so. Boop,
Exactly
and then
right.
you're out.
Now, the recruiter loses some of that power once a hiring manager sees your resume and decides that they like you. Now,
It's
the
like it's
recruiter
starting to
can be
go.
a little
It's
bit more about
starting to come.
yeah. So that's why it's so problematic to demand a high pay rate early in the conversation when you don't have enough leverage yet. And it's sort of like the balance of power. And you can feel the balance of power shift to your favor once, let's say, you're in an interview and the first 10 minutes they're just grilling you. They're asking you all kinds of questions. And then all of a sudden they shift to selling you. They've stopped asking you questions.
Yes, you
Now
can feel that. You totally feel that.
Now they started telling you why it's so great to work on their team and why you should be um, excited about working there and where their company is going. And oh, by the way, when you get there, we're going to work on this together. When that sort of shift starts happening, now the balance of power has come to you. Now you have a little bit more leverage. You're starting to feel the leverage. I call these things buying signals. And
Yeah.
once you have leverage, you need to know what to do with it to get the most out of the pay discussion. But you know,
I think that's great. I think, you really have to be on your toes and kind of just, sense where am I in the process? Like you say, where's the power lever?
yeah,
Um, that's really that's great. That's great.
yep.
Now, so you've got a coaching program.
Yes, I do.
So
So
what does that look like for someone who feels like they probably have a lot to lose and they want to make sure they maximize? Like what would that look like for someone?
yeah, so if you are in that situation and you want to be privately coached, you can reach out to me directly. John at salary.coach is probably the easiest way to get me directly. But if I am privately coaching somebody, then right before they do a phone screen, we can meet together. I can rehearse all this stuff, help you to get through that phone screen so that you get to the interview process. And then once you get invited to interview, we'll spend some time together and I can prep you for that interview so that you are climbing up the value ladder. And then once you have an offer, then I work directly and very closely with my clients on how to structure those questions, how to get through the collaboration effectively to get the very best offer. So my objective here is to maximize the offer that you're going to get while keeping the risk of losing that offer to almost zero. And
Mm.
that's a big focus because fear is what holds people back in this process. They're
I
afraid.
said that right at the top. I said that right at the top. I have felt it. I have felt it myself. I haven't been through a ton of job changes in my life, but the times that I'm in it
Mhm.
is and as experienced as I am, I still
And
I you
you were right, Tony, because people are afraid in this soft job market that they're going to lose the chance to interview when they're in that phone screen. And so they lowball themselves during that conversation just to get the interview. And if you use a range like I suggest, you don't have to do that. You don't have to lowball yourself. If you know what to do, the fear goes away, the anxiety goes away. And same thing happens at the offer stage. 80% of people just take the offer because they're afraid of losing the offer. I had a COO that I was working with not too long ago call me and say, John, I got this offer. It's for the company that we've been talking about. I really want to work there. I think it's good enough. I think I'm just going to say yes. And so if
and
you
you're
find,
like, "Wait,
yeah, if you
thi
find yourself
you
saying
I'm like you're we're putting.
yes,
We this is how I'm sorry. It's like golf.
you
It's
know
like,
what I'm about to say, right?
yeah, I mean, you've exactly. It's
You're
like
about
you're
to leave a
putting for
lot of money.
dough.
Yeah,
You've just hit the green. It's like, let's spend some time and really analyze this, and let's get a hole in one.
yeah. So the COO is negotiating with a CEO. That's the boss, right? And you and I probably both know that a CEO can make any exception they want to make. They can call up HR and say, I don't care what the policy says, I'm doing this, make it happen. And
Bingo.
so the CEO, after we ask questions here, we discover, of course, and I knew this was probably the case, the board of directors already knows this new COO is coming because the board has to approve any C-level offer. Now, how embarrassing would it be for that CEO to go back to his board, who is his boss, and say, "Well, it was a swing and a miss, guys. We weren't able to land this guy." Um, so we were feeling a little bit of leverage here. So we started asking a whole bunch of questions, and we knew that this guy was going to be instrumental in getting a big equity package across the finish line for all the executives. Like they had a big liquidity event coming up in the next couple of years. Everybody on the C suite was going to make millions of dollars once that event happened, and the new COO was going to be in the driver's seat to make that happen. So we started asking the questions. Is it possible to do this? Is it possible to do that? And we ended up getting an extra $613,000 into his package.
Oh,
Only 40,000 of that was salary. The rest was a bunch of other things. But he almost left two Ferraris on the table, Tony. Like he
you know
would.
what? I'm not a Ferrari guy. They're 300 grand each.
Well, they can be probably the
The
lower
fancy one, maybe the ones in
end.
Southern Oregon.
The
The ones in
low,
Alabama are a lot cheaper.
The lower end ones are 300. So the top end Ferraris are over $1 million. So, but 600 grand,
I
that buys
should, you know what?
a lot of
You see
market.
that little thing above me? I should know more about the Ferraris.
Let me
You
put my
probably don't know that
here.
road. I've not even talked about this. This is the first time I've even mentioned that thing.
Oh, the Dragon, that's a big motorcycling road, right? A lot of
Yeah,
motorcycle riders go up there.
yeah, and and you know cars as well.
Yep,
But
yep.
yeah, Western
So,
North Carolina into
yeah,
Tennessee.
that's just one example, but a lot of
$600,000. And the guy was just like ready just to say, look, I'm kind of exhausted. I've gone through this. It's emotional. I
yeah,
don't want to screw up this final little bit. It's good enough.
when you're in the C-suite and you're in between jobs, it can take a long time, like 12, 13, 14 months sometimes to land. And this is why. Maybe you can confirm or deny this, but executive search firms fill most of those roles. Corn Ferry, Egon
Yeah.
Zender,
On a,
those,
yeah.
those companies
Yeah.
are going to fill the
Hmm.
C-suite jobs, right? And when you're working on $1 million position, what's the fee? The fee on that's going to be 35%.
Hmm.
That's 300 grand is the fee. And so when you're Egon Zender or Corn Ferry and you're going into a board or you're talking to a CEO and you're saying, you're going to pay us $300,000 for what? You're going to pay us $300,000 so that we can go find the people that you cannot find on your own. We're going to find the people that are working at your direct competitors. Their heads are down. They're not looking for a job. We're going to go pluck them away and we're going to bring them to you. That's the sales pitch. So that's why an unemployed C-suite person has a hard time breaking through, because theoretically, if you're Egon Zender or Corn Ferry and you bring a slate of 3 candidates and they're unemployed, the company's going to say, "What are we paying you for? We
We
could."
could have found these people, just from LinkedIn.
Right, and it doesn't mean they're less valuable than
No,
anybody else,
but
or
it's that
but this just
the
illustrates
momentic. What is that? Pronounce the
mimetic.
mimetic. It's that mimetic power there that don't seem to have there in that case.
Yeah, so maybe one of the three can be in that category, but
Right.
most of the time it's none of the three, and C-suite people know this, and they know that if they screw up this offer, they might be unemployed for the next 8 or 9 months before they get another one, and that's very costly to them. So, um, people think that this concern, this anxiety around losing the offer is only for people who are maybe low or mid-level in their careers, but that anxiety exists across the whole spectrum. Everybody's worried about that.
Well, I'm glad we were able to address it because I'll tell you, it's it's something that has to be dealt with. You have to confront it right at the top. And listen, I think everything you've shared here today, I think really just confirms you have to understand the market. You need to understand your own worth. And if you don't have the skills and you're not confident, there are people, there are companies, there's books out there that can help kind of guide you through. Look, and why not? You go to build a house, what do? You hire an architect, right? And they bring in all the experts. You don't do it all yourself. And so there's some times when it makes sense to do this. And it's not scary. And had you been John Bates, it could have been scary. But as we now, but like I get credit, I will tell you, this ticker on the bottom was correct. So I'm telling you, it was a typo. I'm sticking by it. I had it from the very beginning.
Yep,
John, what's the website again? The best way to just kind of check you out?
probably email is the best way, john@salary.coach. Or you
Got
can
it.
find me at salarycoachacademy.com.
Excellent. Excellent. John, it's great seeing you.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate the invite. It's been a blast.
It has been. Stay tuned.